Hi everybody, my name is Kathy Milby, and if you haven't guessed by the opening title, I will be discussing history in Hollywood. Not just the history of Hollywood, but how Hollywood has portrayed history. To do this, I will be looking at 3 different dissertations. Stephen A. Anderson's History Written with Lightning, Film, Television, and the Experimental Historiography. Michael Anthony Meneghetti's The Future Has Passed, The Past as Style, Martin Scorsese's History, and a portion of Jennifer Evelyn Smythe's American Cavalcade, Classic Hollywood Filmatic Writing of American History, 1920 through 1942. All 3 of these dissertations were retrieved from ProQuest Dissertation and Global Thesis Database from the Farwell Library. So why film? Since its inception, moving pictures have captured our imaginations. They take us to faraway places, we meet incredible people, and we have amazing adventures all in a short amount of time. So why wouldn't we? And when it comes to historical films and television shows, we have to ask ourselves, how accurate are they? Most historians agree that Hollywood and television has taken great liberties with history. Some would say they've even run a little fast and loose, choosing splashy style and popular music over substance and accuracy. Turn on the television and you are bombarded with channels such as AHC, Smithsonian, the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, the Military Channel, all with different, shows on history. Some of these shows try very hard to be historically accurate, and others not so much. And the same thing goes for Hollywood. As history professors and professional historians, we now have an entire generation that we're working with that's media hungry. They figure, why should we read a book when we can watch a film or turn on the television or even ask Google or Siri? And if our students are turning to film and television for their history, we need to make sure it's as historically as accurate as possible so that we can use it to augment their knowledge of history. The 3 dissertations that I will be discussing follow along on these lines. They look at how film has changed the way we view history. The first dissertation that I found unfortunately couldn't be fully obtained because she has since turned it into a book. This is Jennifer Evelyn Smythe's American Cavalcade. Now, I did have her abstract, so I will be talking about it from there, but I am trying to get a hold of the actual dissertation. And she states in her abstract that American Cavalcade focuses on classic Hollywood filmmakers' adaptations of traditional historical discourse. So, what films does she talk about? Well, here we go. In her 14-year span that she has in this dissertation, she goes over 7 different films. Cimarron, 1931, Scarface, 1932, Annie Oakley, 1939, Star is Born, 1937, Gone with the Wind, also in 1939, and Citizen Kane, 1941. Now think about the statement that was just before that focuses on filmmakers' adaptations of traditional historical discourse. All you have to do is look at Gone with the Wind to see how the filmmakers have led to how we remember history. Taking a book, making it into a movie, and now everybody believes that the entire South was nothing more than moonlight, magnolias, and Tara. Kind of a problem. So we also know that she goes on to look at how Hollywood filmmakers became a critical national historian, actively engaged in the filmatic writing of our history. So she even goes on to say that this dissertation reinterprets the term film historiography. So you can see there's a lot of little nuggets, but no real thing to get a hold of yet. I have the book on order, but I still want the dissertation. The first real dissertation that I got to read the whole thing was Steven Anderson's History Written with Lightning. Now, his dissertation argues that there needs to be a more inclusive definition of visual history and the value of the works that directly engage issues of historical episiotomy. I'm not going to get that word correct. Sorry. Issues of historical importance. There we go. Kind of getting tongue-tied. But basically, he's going through and saying, we have all this visual knowledge, we have all this visual representation, and we need to get a better definition, a better way to wrap our heads about it. It's not all bad, it's not all good, but it is changing how we remember history. It's changing not only our shared memories, but how we perceive different events in history. Each new film or each new television show, depending on who watches it and how they see it, can change how we view the past, especially if they do not have a counterpoint on the knowledge behind it or what else is out there. So he often says that, you know, we really need to look at ways that history is conveyed from one generation to the next. He looks at it through social lenses and cultural and, of course, economic lenses, and how the media really does not only hold the key as to how history is documented, but how it's passed on. He discusses many, many different movies and television shows, and to reiterate how we do consume our history and our historiography. So one of the biggest things that he said was the last line of his abstract, which is what really caught me into reading the whole thing. He says that the author focuses on moments when history becomes instrumental artists, forged into a counter-narrative or simply re-remembered in ways that are politically, social, and useful. Looking at how history can change everything, or how films in history can change everything. The other dissertation is all about Martin Scorsese's historic filmmaking. And Meneghetti goes into not only a very focused, how Scorsese uses a very focused interpretation of history, not so much to give you the root cause and effect, but to sort of put you in the shoes. And the three films that Martin Meneghetti discusses out of Martin Scorsese is Casino, The Aviator, and Gangs of New York. All three very, very intense films. But one of the things I loved about this dissertation was how he really spent a good deal of time discussing how historians have looked down on filmmakers and film as a way of conveying history. And he really does go into the fact that it is a way of discussing historical presentations. He goes to say that Scorsese loves history. He says he finds it a deep interest, just like he does cinema and popular music. But he goes on to say, I may be a history buff, but I'm not a historian. All of these dissertations use sources just beyond the films themselves. There's a growing number of film historians like William Gwynne, Robert Rosenstein, Timothy Corrigan, Robert Tomlin, who are all quoted and used in these dissertations. And they try to look at the films and the film history, or the presentation of history and historiography, beyond just the bad publicity that it's always had. And the one good thing that I'm taking away from looking at these dissertations is that it strengthened my resolve to further investigate how Hollywood has changed our history. Think about it. We have films with us all the time. Everybody watches a film. But if you could use a film such as Schindler's List, Apocalypse Now, Dunkirk, Ben-Hur, The Ten Commandments, A Night to Remember, you can use them to help a student and really push off and get a conversation starting. Case in point, honestly, I didn't realize that we had an All-American Girls Baseball League until I watched A League of Their Own. Not a big fan of baseball. Sorry, but it's true. But because of that, I was able to go in and find out more about them. And a teacher could use that in a classroom. Say if they wanted to talk about the bombing of Pearl Harbor, they could look at the movie Pearl Harbor or Tora, Tora, Tora. Explain how each are different, but how they represent what happened on December 7th and the repercussions that came from it. I hope I haven't babbled too long, which I probably have. I look forward to your responses. I'll see you at the movies.